Oh, yeah.
It's
Oh.
perfect. Sort of these stories.
I told them, I was like, it's gonna be hard on the weekend, a lot of people are. usually very busy.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, normally it's not, I mean.
Yeah.
Just make it, I'm hanging out. So,
Just this one.
this happened to be. the
Your
day-
birthday.
Day of my birth, and my kids, wife, said we already have. Oh, good.
The pretty cozies.
Yes, but, even this afternoon about events that see.
They're doing their skills. Yeah, and then what you'll do is you'll share, you should get there. Should be good.
Thank you.
Sorry, well, for your.
Boy, I think that you might have run it down since the way to go.
Oh, what?
So 2 or 3 days. $100. Okay, I ran it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. There were 100 years.
Oh my goodness, goodness.
That's way better, and it's less brain damage than that. Yeah. Way better on lots of levels, I think. I mean, it's only the first time I've done it, so let's also take that with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah, and like your verbiage is different than someone else's, so.
So-
Search.
How to express, but you know what, I did go back to the. Had I been running before, I plugged it through ChatGPT.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Well, that one worked before too.
That's what I mean, so I don't know if it's because I went back to that ad, if that was the increase, or I think it's the shorter term higher dollar, but.
I did not run that because I am getting ready to leave town. But
I'm gonna give it such a fun life. I hope you-
it's everything on our main.
Oh,
Oh,
So-
thank you.
The paper was out, so just.
No, okay, I didn't realize it.
So I, the next one.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I've been using it, love it.
okay, good, because I'm a little. I gotta get something that's a better lead gen to my website. Than the one I'm using, so, I'm signed up on that, so I'm hoping to get the ad out.
Which have you ever done homework?
I have,
Yeah,
I canceled it,
did you?
and our office read.
Cause I saw PMG on there, yeah.
And they use it, they pay for it, but I don't ever hear any feedback from it.
Yeah,
I've heard mixed reviews.
the thing that amazes me is I get every week. 75+% open rate. That to me is big,
Well,
because at least people are opening.
yeah, I get it too, from where refinance, there's.
Yeah,
And the lender saying using it. And. I mean, industries have probably different attitude and have.
That's how
Yeah,
I
I
get,
don't even-
I get.
I don't even go through it. At least go, oh, there it is. I don't, think the only time I really care is if I'm in some house.
But some of the people that,
I know the marketplace and kind of the activity, and some will skew that perception of it, but I've heard. People like it, is the opening all that really matters, maybe, just.
so on the lending side, the lenders, when they join, they pay $250 a month. And then that information is attached to your home bot pay. So when it comes down to like those sections versus refinance or, get a. Whatever, there's like there's like 3 or 4 questions, then your information pops in. Automatically, not just a blank, so I don't know if it's CMG that would pop in.
Yeah, well, if you look at those, participants would.
And then there's one other section on there. When you have a lender on it, you can get buyers.
right, yes.
And so when you go and you send that to a buyer,
Yeah.
you're on there every time it gets sent to a buyer for the pre-qual questions and stuff.
I have such. Late limits. It's just another thing to decide whether you want to do that or not, spend your money that way. I spend my money in so many different ways to add another one. 90% of my business comes from you guys.
So if CMP paid for it and they're on, oh, yeah. But why are they on there in this one?
Well, because it's a corporation, so they have to sponsor it. It's gotta come from them to give us approval to do it, and then you take it out.
So you still have a personal letter, you can't just go, just send it to anybody at CMP? Oh, that's crap.
It's an individual, because we have to do it separate.
Okay,
But anyway, it's more about spending, where you spend your money.
well, this is a lot cheaper than the other stuff for us. Was it 40? Oh, $40. And then, yeah, I remember they, oh, there's 25.
It was, yeah.
It's 40 to,
Hey Liz, can you hear me?
well, I'm.
Great, thank you.
We can hear you.
So I send a card, every Mondays I get the report back, who's opened it and how many times.
What are you guys?
Uh,
Yeah.
Nice to meet you too, Harrison.
Things.
Quick information to help. Good. I do a couple different approaches to it. Let's see, hopefully it makes sense.
So that's what I've been doing so far.
Some of this can be a little bit
Yeah.
technical, but it's good to know what's going on. Good. Yeah. All right, we'll get started.
Let's see here. 7:24.
Good morning, this is Christina, we're off campus. And hello to those who are here behind me, thanks for joining.
And what I was.
What I would do today is go through a couple of things. One is I feel like it's always great to understand the market. So that when we talk to our clients who say don't want to buy, and here's the reason why I don't want to buy, and how do we help them stay positive and understand why it may make sense for them to buy? Because I truly believe in my heart of hearts that it's still, there's a lot of opportunity right now to buy homes. I always feel like anything else, the time to do something is when everybody else doesn't want to. And find the reasons why you could and should. And I still feel very confident that our marketplace and industry in Colorado and all the Denver metro areas we do our business in are staying very strong, very healthy. Of course, there's going to be some outliers where they drop price a lot, or they have a high price and they sell kind of weirdly very expensive. But the reality is there's still people wanting to be here. The demand is still high. The market's going to adjust. Many of you who are here outside of one person sitting behind me have seen a very strong market ever since you got into the industry, or stronger. This time of year is very normal for it to be doing what it's doing right now, which is traditionally after the 4th of July, we just see things quiet down quite a bit, which to me is again an opportune time to be out looking for property and making a little more aggressive offers, because the sellers that are selling are being told by their listing agents typically. This is a quieter time in the industry now that we're in more of a balanced market where you actually can negotiate transactions. So I feel like it's a huge opportune time, even with rates being up, which is what we're going to talk about today, on how do we create opportunities for the buyers who say, I can't afford the payments, the rates are too high, prices are too high, I'm going to wait for the prices to drop 20%. I don't think that's going to happen. Even if rates stay elevated at these levels for a while, we still have so many solutions to help buyers get into a house. And we have a lot of sellers who are willing to be accommodative and helpful in negotiations to help make it more affordable for a buyer. So I'm going to jump into why I feel that way with some market data that was presented to me and my company from a gentleman we have who's the economist. He presents twice a month for us. He used to work on Obama's economic board and he's highly respected in the industry. Obviously, he can't tell future, but he's got charts and graphs that do help us determine what could happen. And we sent out, did you guys get my email the other day? It was a couple of days ago about the forecast of rates, which surprised the heck out of me actually, that all 8 or 9 companies all predict rates to be significantly lower than they are right now. So it's nice to see everybody on the same page. And hopefully 4 of them are right, which means they're all right because they're all in this range. That made really good sense for the dropping of rates, which really is the current concern about the market. So first graph here is, it's called, I don't know if I need to make this bigger. Can you guys see it okay? Should I make it bigger? Thumbs up if you need it bigger. Okay. Liz, your thumb is the only one I can see, so thanks. All right, so do I click on that? bigger. Let's see. There we go. Okay. All right, so this is just gives you an idea of the history of interest rates, and I always like to share this because a lot of people say, I only knew rates when they were 2, 3, and 4 or 5. But look at that red line where we see kind of in the middle there, it's right around 7%-ish is really where rates have been on average. Just overall, we've been below the 7% rate for a really long time, except for just recently. So in showing them that that where the rates are still at the low end of the scale. Also those gray lines that are going up and down. Anybody have an idea what those are? Those are the recessions that took place during those years. So if you take a look at those items where the gray lines where there was recessions, eventually we see the blue line drop down. That's where rates drop during a recession. And you can see that in the majority of them. If you look all the way through this whole graph, all the way up until now, which again, they're predicting a soft recession, but a recession nonetheless, and probably not lasting real long. So those gray lines, the wider they are, the longer the recession lasted, the thinner they are, the shorter it lasted. So everyone's still feeling there's going to be some version of a recession, not probably a very big one, which is great also. But typically when we have any form of recession, we see rates go down. So that's one kind of feather in our cap of why we think rates are going to come down eventually once the recession kind of kicks in again as a mild one. Next is to show you where they think the rates are going to drift down. And it's all based on what's called the 10-year treasury yield and the 2-year treasury yield. Again, not to get into too many details, but I show this graph because the spreads are getting smaller and smaller. And what we need the 10-year and the 2-year treasury yields, which is really what gives an indication of what rates are going to do, to narrow. And as they narrow, we will tend to see mortgage rates, long-term rates get lower like they've been in the past. So this is just kind of a fun one to show how we're seeing things come down versus going up. And again, another item to talk with a buyer. Again, if you feel like they can interpret this information enough to go, oh, I see the lines, I see where they are. It looks like they're kind of moving in the direction that makes sense. Now, of course, we have now gone up from here. So we are well over 6% now. We're at like 7.25 on the rates. So this graph was prior to the most recent rate increases, which was just happened 10 business days ago. And then the last one is the history of properties that have sold since the 1960s, showing what value of homes have done. And again, if you look at the gray bar areas, that's the same recession timeframe where homes tend to escalate and go up after a recession. The most recent one was 08 and 09. You can see that the thickest bar up there on the right side near where it says 2010. That's the other recession where again you see it just propel from there amazingly. Small recession in 2020 and it just took off again, pandemic, and now we're seeing a little bit of a softening and kind of a really moving more to the right and flat as opposed to going up any further right now. But it's just a matter of time. It's just, I mean, the history tells us it's a matter of time. Things will probably continue to escalate. I mean, those of us who bought homes back in my first home was 1987. I said, there's no way my little $125,000 co-op, not even a condo, a co-op in Southern California was going to go up in value. And it did. It's probably now at a $900,000, 750 square foot co-op. And I got it for $125,000. So the reality is the market does what it does, and we can prove that in a chart to our clients. And all this is some things I share with some clients when I go, what do you think? I think we're in a bubble, I think this, or I think that. I just give them history, and that's all. It speaks for itself, and I can give an opinion as well. But I think it's really good to show this. So that's one thing I wanted to share with you guys about where I think the market is, because it makes sense. It's part of the conversation with our buyers and sellers. And then the last thing is really where the housing market is still very, very short on supply. If you've been reading the emails I send out talking about new builders and how they're really getting a lot of traction because they've got inventory and they're definitely helping fill that void. It is a reality that we need what they're building, but it's just not enough. And part of it is because. Why do you think there's not enough? Those are, huh?
Golden hand.
Right, golden handcuffs gotta be set, and I think you're saying people are sitting on 2% and 3% mortgage rates. They don't wanna sell and let go of those loans. There's just not enough resale inventory, so people are looking at new builds. And the builders currently, and I think this might shift, we'll see. Currently are doing some crazy giveaways as far as incentives to promote their properties, and we do it, we have builder accounts, so we do it alongside them, so I'm very familiar with them. Where they'll pay a ton of money to buy down the rate for specific homes. They're giving big incentives if you use their lender, their title company, towards options and things like that. So for those of you who still sell new homes or have seen advertisements, that's who's actually supporting the market where buyers are needing it. And it's great. I mean, we say have the ability to go buy something. So that's another thing to show buyers and sellers, in my opinion. And then the last thing is who's buying homes, what does the market predict in the future? So those yellow bars on the left side of that graph, that age group 28 to 38-ish, their demographic is so big, bigger than any other demographic in the history of the United States, have the capacity to buy a home. And they're out looking to buy homes, and they're going to start looking to if they haven't already. They have the income and the ability to do it, and they want to get out and buy a place. So this is going to drive the demand even further, and it's keeping the demand up because that's the population of people who want to buy, who are in a position in their lives to look to buy. As I mentioned, they're making money to be able to afford to buy. They don't like the payments, they don't like the high rates, but they can still qualify and afford it at this point in time. So that's the market that's going to keep the market in high demand and low inventory. So these are, again, things I always feel like people like data, people like to know why you're saying what you're saying. You have an opinion, but you can back it up with some info. I'm happy to share this presentation with you, so you'll have it, and then you can decide how you want to use it. But these are things I share with people if they have more questions about it, getting more detailed data. Any questions on that before I move on? No. All right, next one I want to show is. Okay, so. All right, so you guys have heard me talk about a program called List and Lock. And I'm going to reintroduce it to you very quickly, not going into all the details about it. But the reason why it's such a powerful program, and I'm going to share with you how we're using it with buyers who say, I don't think I can buy right now, rates are too expensive. There are some homes that you probably see if you're doing a search for them, you see them already in liking the properties. But then they get monthly payments like, this is out of my range, I'm not comfortable with it. Even though they might qualify, they're still feeling unsettled by the payment. And keep in mind, as always, regardless of where rates are, payment drives people to buy a house, to buy a car, to buy a boat, to buy anything that's more expensive and they just can't pay cash for it typically. And so this program, how we're utilizing it, and I'm going to verbalize it and go through some examples, is if you have a buyer that says, this is the house I really like, and they're offering it at a certain price, and I'll go into this example. What we're doing now is we are getting on the phone with a listing agent and contacting them and saying, we have a potential buyer who's very interested in your property. However, they can't afford or don't feel comfortable affording the current payments that would be associated with this property. But we have a program that if your seller is willing to contribute to help reduce the interest rate for the buyer, they would now feel more comfortable buying that home with a $400 or $500 lower monthly payment and still be able to afford to purchase your home. And I haven't done one yet, but we have 12 loan officers in our branch. And several of them have created transactions by getting on the phone and calling those listing agents. And oftentimes we do a 3-way call with you, that listing agent, and me or a loan officer from our company who offers the program to share with them how this program works. Because the benefit of it is not reducing the price as the seller, but contributing money to help reduce the rate. Of which then my company also throws in 1% or 1 point to buy the rate down further. To then have a significantly lower than market interest rate to help make the monthly payment affordable. And a buyer goes, I can't afford a $650 house. Well, if we can reduce the payment by $400 or $500 a month. That $400 or $500 represents quite a bit of borrowing power. That now they go, well, I can afford that if they can. I just couldn't afford it at the level it was if it was just at current market interest rates. So this is a strategy we're using, and we didn't even know we were going to use this strategy when we first came out with the program. It was just, hey, if you have a property that isn't selling, or you have a seller who wants to utilize something to help sell their home faster, here's a great option. Well, the program came out when the market was still fairly strong, and it didn't get a lot of attention. Now the market is where it's at, and it's getting a ton of attention. I mean, daily we're getting calls about, I heard about this program, tell me more. So I'm going to go through that quickly. Again, not the parts about the program and how to use it, but how it affects a buyer to help them consider buying a home that they may not thought not to buy because they didn't think they could afford the payments. I'll just go through this little thing just so you know, because I want to keep it like, well, what does the program really do? But so there is the seller contributes 1 to 3%, or these are points to buy down the rate. Our company contributes another point to buy down the rate. So we could have up to 4 points to buy down the rate. And are you guys familiar with what a point is? You ever heard the term discount points?
Yes.
Okay, so what discount points are is money, great, thanks Liz. Money you pay upfront to buy down the interest rate permanently for the life of a loan. So that rate goes from 7.25 to 5.5 and stays there for the life of that loan type.
Okay.
That lowering of the rate is significant in the monthly payment reduction. Is it expensive? Well, it depends on how much the seller is willing to drop the price versus contribute to buying the rate down for the buyer instead of dropping the price. Because the reduction of the payment is so much greater than just reducing the price. If you have a listing that hasn't sold, we can talk more about it. But this will attract more buyers to just pay more attention to this property because you can list it in the MLS that way as a below market rate. We have all the legal verbiage in there and it all comes together. And this is more sales for you guys, but it will separate you from any other agents trying to get a listing or selling the current one and saying, here's a unique program we have to help you if your house doesn't sell the first couple of weeks. We have another option to make it much more attractive and get more traction in the market. So here's an example. So if somebody's selling a home for $650, they put 10%, they want to buy a home for $650, they put a 10% down payment, they borrow $585, the principal and interest, and I used rates when I created this from a couple weeks ago, but you'll see the power of it. If they have a new payment of $37.94 at the current price, $650, if the seller says, hey, I'm going to reduce my price to try and make it more attractive, they drop it down by 3%, they come down to $630, borrows this money. The payment that it was at the $650 at $37.94 compared to what it would be if they dropped the price by $30,000 or $20,000, it comes out to $36.80. It's $114 a month difference. Not a very large difference in the payment. I mean, it's not impactful. I'll tell you that as right off the bat. If I were like, oh, it's only $114 less, it means nothing to me. It's unusual, but that's what they say. Now, if I told them it was $114 more, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's $114 more. I mean, it's amazing how that reaction comes out. It happens all the time. So again, keep this in mind, we're asking the seller to drop the price by 3%. And in the program, we're going to say to them, don't drop your price, use that same $20,000 to buy down the rate for the buyer. And that's what this next slide shows. So in lieu of that, we keep the price at $650. Same down payment, same loan amount to the buyer, but now they get down to a 4 3/4 rate. And again, this was when I did it, so it's a little higher now. It's closer to like 5 1/4 to 5.5. But it's the same relative difference in payment. That's not going to change. So now they would have a payment of $32.88 if we look at the 10-year arm, because that loan, this 10-year arm that we're using a lot, it comes back into play when there's a lot of points being paid. It's when there's no points being paid that it's not a beneficial loan anymore. It's actually higher than a 30-year fixed rate. But when you pay points, it's much you get much more bang for your buck using it. Or if they decide they want to do a 30-year fixed rate, again, at that time, it would buy the rate down to 5 3/4. So we got these two payments here, 32.88 and 34.13. If we bring it over, we compare it to what it was. So now if they did the 10-year arm, it was at the 650 price, with reducing the, sorry, a 630 price when they reduced the price. Compared to what the 10-year payment is, they would say $506 a month on their payment. That is a massive adjustment to someone's payment. That equals just the interest, was putting that on there, $60,720. More important is they get a reduction of their payment by $506 per month. And that's the power of this program, and not reducing the price, but getting the seller to put that money towards a permanent interest rate buyout. So if now the buyer goes, I couldn't afford a $3,800 payment, but I could definitely afford a $3,300 payment. That makes more sense to them. That's the power of looking at this kind of consideration for helping a sale take place. And it's a sale and a program that the listing agent had no clue even existed, because they're not using this program. They don't understand. I'm gonna tell you, I've talked to hundreds of realtors about this. The capacity to understand it and then utilize it with their sellers has been very challenging. And I think it's just understanding it is not always simple, and then trying to re-explain it to their seller is even more challenging, which is why I offer to get on a three-way call video chat to help explain it to a seller. But now the market is shifting, and we're getting more people just saying, you told me about this, but I still have no idea how it works. Can you get on a call with me and my seller? Because I said, and then there's an opportunity of helping seller home faster. If you looked at the 30-year fixed rate, here's the difference, still significant, $381. The other way of looking at it, because I always get questioned, well, what if we said, well, can they now buy a more expensive home with the same payment that they would have paid for that 650 house at current market rates? But if we find another home that's higher and they buy the rate down, will that help? And the answer is yes. In that example, instead of going at 650, the borrower can now push that price up to 725. So there's two ways of using the program. One is to increase the price if they needed to get to a different level of home, if they couldn't find what they liked, or they could use it to reduce the monthly payment at the current price of the home, obviously not trying to find it more expensive. There's a lot of different ways to utilize the improvement of a lower monthly payment to help either have lower payments or borrow more money with the same payment as the payment was at the 650 price at current interest rates. Again, a lot of moving parts. So you see how that works? I think that's the most important piece, is that these two numbers here are very, very important that a buyer sees to help them understand that maybe they can now buy a home that they thought they could.
Do you have marketing materials that could be left in a listing if the seller agrees to that?
Totally. That's all part of the program. It comes out on the day they lock in the rate. There's an all matrix that says exactly what the rate is. The rate is guaranteed for 2 months for a new buyer who comes in. And then there's a grid. So there's a credit score, down payment, and then the interest rate associated with that. And it's FHA, VA, Fannie Mae, 30-year fixed, and the 10-year. All those are available. It's not a jumbo product, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, most jumbo buyers.
Yeah, typically.
Pretty different.
They could, yeah, but you know, prices are getting up there, so, you know, so, yeah. But anyway, Debbie's question was, is there marketing material? And when a seller participates in the program, there's a website and a portal that we walk them through, that they get, everybody gets all the marketing material. Their home is on there, they get a certificate of being locked in. There's a flyer that you present and leave at the open house or at the house, so when people come in, they know what's available. And then we can tie that into as you guys have utilized our open house spreadsheets and our single property websites. So all that can be combined with this to help market that property as hard as possible and get that sold for either your seller or like we're doing now, is we're being more proactive in bringing it to a listing and saying, if you use this program with your seller, I have a client that's willing to buy your house. So we're looking at it now as two different ways. That makes sense? So that's one really powerful tool to help a buyer get off the fence to buy a place. I'm gonna go over one more option here. And then open it up for questions. I know you guys got a lot of stuff going on today. So let me jump in here. I'm going to go to my personal website because there's a lot of great tools there. And I'm going to show you how to use them. Here, okay. So this particular option, and we've talked a lot about, and talked about it several times today, is 2-1 buy down loan and what impact, what potential benefits are there for a buyer to help them consider buying a home. Whoop. All right, let's try that again. I'm sorry, I don't know what I did. There. Okay, so we're gonna go to resources, calculator. All right, so on this website, there's a lot of different calculators. We're gonna look at the 3-2-1 buy down. If you Google my name and just say Mitch Friedman CMG on the first link, and then that'll take you right to my website. So I want to just walk through this to show you the benefits of the 2-1 buy down that still people don't fully understand, whether it's sometimes on the real estate side, sometimes on the buyer side. And we want to make sure everybody has a good understanding because it's so powerful. So let's say we're going to look at 3 quick options, same right. Let's say we have a loan of $500,000, 30-year loan, and really true current rates right now are 7.25%. And when I use this, it says third-party contribution. That means what amount is the seller going to pay? If you leave 2, which is defaulted, it's not enough to cover the cost of that. So I'm going to put 0, and you'll see why. When we put 0, we get the calculation to show up properly. It's $23,200. That's the cost of a 3-2-1 buy down for a loan amount of $500,000 at a current rate of 7.25%. Those 2 numbers influence what that buy down cost is going to be based on those 2 items. On the right side, this now shows the buyer and you, what are their payments in the first 4 years? So year 1, and I'm going to ask this question, if the rate is 7.25 and we're doing a 3-2-1 buy down, what does that 3 represent, and what is the interest rate in the first year? So the 3 represents the interest rate will be bought down 3% from the note rate of 7.25 with the first year payment. So that rate would be 4.25%. So 3 represents 3 minus the actual interest rate. Because the interest rate is going to be on the note and the mortgage. That's the rate the buyer is getting. It's just being bought down with upfront cash by the seller at the time of closing. Year 2, what do you think the 2 represents?
2% down from 7. So would they be at 5% for the second year?
5
Or 5.25?
Correct. That's that payment. And then year 3, it's 1% below the rate, so that's 6.25. And year 4, it's now back up to 7.25 through year 30, or however long we keep the loan. So you can see the difference in payments between, let's just call it $2,500 for easy calculation and $3,400. So it's over $900 a month lower in monthly. It's almost $1,000, $960 in payment for year 1. That's got to take the edge off for a buyer to feel way more comfortable about buying a home with a monthly payment at this level. Yes, the reality of it is they're gonna escalate, it's a known escalation, it's defined and guaranteed, there's no like, well, what if the rates go up higher, it doesn't matter. This schedule is never gonna change, it's a guaranteed fixed schedule. Now, because we still think rates may come down over the next couple of years. Let's say they end up refinancing in 2 years. But they still have all this money left over in year 3 that they haven't used for the buy down that the seller gave them at closing, they gave us $23,000. Whatever's left over will automatically be refunded to the buyer at the time they do and close on a refinance. So they don't lose that money, it just gets refunded because it wasn't used yet, because they didn't get it in the 3rd year on this loan, they ended up paying it off with the refinance. So if mortgage rates drop to 5 3/4, we would get them out of 7 1/4, use our free refinance with them, and then they would get a refund of whatever was left over from the monies in that account for the buy down money. So I get that question all the time, what happens to that money? So this is the most aggressive buy down. Is it happening? I just went under contract, a client went under contract up in the mountains, second home, a 482 condo, and the seller is paying $17,000 on a 3-2-1 buy down for them. Shocked, we were all shocked that they accepted, but they did. So that's the most aggressive buy down. The one that's more common right now is a 2-1 buy down. And what that is, you'll see that year 1 that was here just went away, and this is really the same as like year 2 and 3 on the 3-2-1 buy down. So the payments now are $27,000, $3,000, and $3,400, but you're going to see the cost drop dramatically from $23,200 to $11,786. A whole lot more palatable for a seller who's selling a house for $550,000, whatever the price is, to consider doing this instead of dropping the price by $11,000. Because the $11,000 drop in price only saves the buyer about $80 a month in their payment, compared to dropping it $300 in the first year. And $700 in the first year and about $350 in the second year. So again, this is a way to help share with a buyer to say, I can afford these payments at this level, but I couldn't afford it at the other level. So this is a way to help, again, ease their way in to get used to making payments at a level that's comfortable. They know, we all know the reality is it could escalate to that $3,400, so they still have to feel comfortable with that. But a lot of people have different things going on in their careers, or they may have a partner or spouse that's in school, that's getting out of school within 2 years or 3 years. They'll have another income in the property to help make these payments. So it's a different and another way to help afford the payment when those payments escalate to that level. Or we look at refinancing, same reason. We can refinance them out of there, it didn't make sense to do that, we do that. So if you have any listings, I would definitely suggest considering going to your seller and saying, hey, we haven't sold the house, it's been a month, or it's been 3 weeks. We've had great activity and traffic, but we still haven't got an offer or an offer that makes sense. Go to them and say, you know what, we should offer up $11,000 or $12,000 to help a buyer reduce their monthly payments on a temporary buy-down. Or look at that list lock as another option. This is a much simpler way.
Pro or con over one or the other, if you're a month into a listing on the market.
Between
Just
the
offering
list and lock versus the. Yeah, you're gonna get more bang for your buck on the list and lock. Because there's a total of 4 points.
Except then you give it that dollar, right?
You've given it if they utilize the program. Yeah, so yes, you've committed to using it. Right. Now, in order for that list to lock, go ahead, Liz.
I'm still not grasping why this would be more beneficial to a buyer. I guess, no, more so, why would it be more beneficial to a seller to contribute this much to a buyer in the process rather than just lowering the sale amount of the home?
Because Debbie just said it's the net amount that you're looking at. So if you can net the exact same amount of money, if they reduce the price by, let's just call it $12,000, or if they offer to pay $12,000 in concession, the appeal to a buyer is way more impressive with using it to lower the rate or do a 2-1 buy down program, because they get to take advantage of significantly lower monthly payments.
Over the course of their loan.
Over those first 2 years.
Right,
Sellers,
right.
how they get to that bottom line, right? All they care about is what the debt is that they're walking out the door with. The buyer can use those same dollars and literally drop their payment by, a nice dinner out a month, or they could do the interest rate buy down and actually have it affect their whole budget.
Right, so,
That didn't explain it.
no, you did. I mean,
That helps,
yeah.
definitely. Thank you.
So what we're talking about today, though, it's a really good question, is how do we help a buyer get more comfortable buying a home when they think the payments are too high because of where current rates are? This is a solution to help them consider looking to buy something because they may have no idea this even is available to them. And because we're in a market, if we were in the market like 3 years ago, this would be immaterial. But with sellers like, are you kidding me? We don't need to pay this kind of money for you. We've got 6 people right behind your offer. But this is the market we're in right now. What we're trying to do is bridge together as a company, our company and me, bridge together a buyer that's on the fence going, can I afford this? And a seller saying, how do I get my house? And this is a very balanced way of making that work given the current market environment. How do we best use concessions to benefit both parties? Because it is benefiting the seller. They're gonna get to sell their home and not drop their price $20,000 when they've only dropped it, when they haven't dropped it at all, when they gave a concession for $12,000. Their net number is greater, to Debbie's point. They didn't need to drop it by 20 grand, they only dropped it by 12 by giving $12,000 concession. So they made, in that example, $8,000 extra dollars by not having to drop it by $20,000.
The other thing that I think is super important in this market, in any market, but it's just with all of this extra information and programs at your disposal, that presents you as the real estate expert, right? And you've got all of these different ways and you're trying to find the way that works best for your specific client, rather than taking this client and trying to put them in one box and say, here's how it works, right? You've got options, and for each client, it's gonna be a different one that makes the most sense. But you've got the information in your back pocket, literally, to be able to listen to their unique needs and meet those needs in the best way possible.
Right, and the same conversation with the seller, just the different conversation, the other side of that equation, of that conversation. How come my house isn't selling? What ideas do you have to help me get it sold? It's the same conversation. It's just affecting their net versus affecting their monthly payment, like it is for the buyer. Is that helpful on that side?
Extremely, yes. Thank you so much, both of you.
Sure, so let's look at one more option. So let's say a seller says, you know what, I'm not paying $12,000. I just bought this house a 1.5 years ago. I'm just breaking even to get out, but I gotta get out. So the other option to help a buyer is we look at what's called the 1-1 buy down. And what does that mean? Well, now the rate is bought down by 1%. So now we're at 6.25 in year 1, 6.25 in year 2. And then we go to 7.25 in year 3 through 30. So they still get the benefit of reduction of payments by about $340. And the cost of the seller now drops down to $79.75. That 1-1 buy down is a lot less expensive than the 2-1 buy in, which was $12,000, and the 3-2-1, which was $23,000. So this becomes possibly more palatable and affordable for the seller to contribute if they didn't have a lot of wiggle room because they bought the home, in the peak of the market for the market at that time. Or not, but they just go, I need to pay me out of here, but I need you to sell my house quickly. And so that's those are two demands that kind of counteract each other. And here's a way to kind of bridge that and go, well, here's the least expensive way to make your house more saleable to a prospective buyer, as opposed to dropping your price by $8,000, if that would be the other strategy. Because again, $8,000, we know it's about $7.50 reduction in a buyer's monthly payment for every $1,000. So if you drop the price by $8,000, that's $60 a month reduction in payment to the buyer. But if you do a buy down, it's $340 compared to $75. whatever I just said, 80. So it's a much larger impact to the buyer to look and utilize something like this. And then there is a 1-0 buy down, so it's just the first year and that's it, which is gonna be less expensive, so it's just gonna be $3,078 year one, $34 in year two, and it's a $4,000 buy down for that first year. And just because we're on this, I'll do this quick and then I'm done on this part. If you go into this tab called amortization, what this will show to a buyer is the monthly payment breakdown, how much is payment with the payment, how much is principal, how much is interest, kind of the traditional amortization. How much interest they pay so far from the loan, so year month one, month two, month three, etc. But it also shows how much of the buy down is being used for that month. And then it goes, in this case, I chose the 1-0 buy down, it's only gonna be for 12 months. So after 12 months, it then goes to 0. So all that money in that account is now being utilized after 12 payments, and they're done with the buy down. But it still continues to show the tally of interest and how their balance reduces. So there's a lot of different things you can use on this particular calculator where we can add in things like real estate taxes, because keep in mind, these are just principal and interest payments. But if a buyer says, well, what about all the other parts of my payment? The beauty of this is you go into that advanced tab. Let's just say this is $2,500. And then now this will show the full payment with taxes and insurance along with principal and interest. The only difference is we can't and don't put mortgage insurance in here, unfortunately, because that'll vary based on credit score, etc. So we have to let them know if they have mortgage insurance, it's not including that. But it gives them an idea. It's a great tool and resource for you to use when you're talking to a buyer or a seller, because you can use the same thing with a seller. Any questions on that? If you guys have another minute, I can show you quickly the List Them Up website if you want to see it, just so you have an idea what it looks like. It is going to be back in my calculator, going to be purchase and List and Lock. So this website was created really for a seller. There's a little video here that talks about how the program works and the positive approach of using it. It's only a couple minutes long. Talks about things that they get with utilizing the program. And then if they go, hey, I want to find out more, we will you click get started. And this is something I would do with you and your seller on a video call together, because it's really helpful when I can be on there and answer their questions right away and help them navigate through this program. So someone give me an address I can fill in who you know. All right, how about we use 5701 Yukon Street.
Oh, that's a good address.
All right, use that, or you can manually enter it if it doesn't show up. This just gives more information to the seller about how it works. We determine how much they want to contribute. We determine the letting know it's a 60-day lock, and then they can market their house with these discounted rates to attract more buyers. They're going to get these things, as I'll show you in a minute. We talked about the open house flyer, the lock certificate to show them in writing that the interest rate's been locked in at the time they utilize it, images to show them the MLS, social posting, sign riders we have as well if you want to market it that way with your properties, and a custom property video. All that can be done with this program.
What is the website again?
It's it's under my, I think you can go to it's in my website
Okay.
under purchase, and then it'll say List Them Up.
Okay.
Let me just see if it shows up as what it is.
What?
Okay, that's what it shows. Find it generically. Yeah, so probably do a generic that.
Under List and Lock.
Yeah. And then it's more probably just kind of what the program's about,
Mhm.
which is great. It's good for us if you want to tell the seller to check it out. But it would be, we need it to be defined per loan officer.
Gotcha.
Because we are representing them on that transaction,
Yeah.
you and I.
Yeah.
So we got an address, we didn't get started. It'll first ask questions. All right, how much does the seller want to contribute? Just gonna go to the maximum just for a moment. We're gonna say the price is $650, well, let's say $550. It's not a multi-unit, those are more expensive on the rates, it's not a condo, those are also more expensive on the rates for the moment. And it's not a manufactured home, those are also more expensive on the rates, and you have to have a larger down payment for a manufactured home. So you click on see your rate options. It is now surfing our current rates for today. It's also adding in our 1 point that we've agreed to pay in addition to the seller's 3 points. So it's calculating that as well. And now it's going to give you current best rate scenario, what you can do. So the lowest rate we found, and I'll show you where it comes in, is 5.625%. The APR is 6.062 for the 3% seller concession. That concession is $16,500. So they're agreeing to pay 3% of the purchase price. What I learned is once they agree to paying that, they pay that regardless. So if a buyer puts a huge down payment, and normally points are based on the loan amount, they've already obligated themselves to $16,500. The buyer can utilize that money for closing costs, whatever else, but they don't get, we can't reduce that concession after it's been committed for.
And it can't be increased either,
I can't go more than 3%.
but like they could agree to say 2%, and then if need be,
Yeah.
could you go up to 3?
Yeah, we can change it, sure, oh yeah.
So you can go
we're
that
locked
way
in,
now.
yeah, we're locked, yeah, the day we lock it, like any other lock. The day we lock the loan, whether, let's say it's 2%, they pay 2 points, we still add in our 1, so there's 3 points. And I'll do an example, whatever that rate looks like, that'll be committed for, and then if the buyer comes in and says, well, I want another point, and the seller says, I'll do it, they can do that, and then we'll reduce the rate with that extra point. We just go back to the day we locked it in.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome. So what they get is they get this lock certificate. When we have it, when it's actual listing, we'll know, we get a listing picture that comes in here. And then here's the open house flyer Debbie was chatting about or asking about. Is there something you can leave at the open house? And it's yes, this is not complete, but it'll give you what the rates are on this. Like if today was the day and this was the property we were selling, it will show exactly what they are. So somebody was looking at doing a traditional conventional loan, depending on what their scores were, their down payment. These are the rates associated with that. So it's just gonna be this matrix of, if they were putting 10% down and they had a credit score of 780, their rate would be 6.25 today. They don't get that advertised rate because that's on a different program. So you're always gonna want to advertise the lowest rate possible. That's the beauty of it. Then if we go into FHA, these are the rates available for that. And this is the actual flyer that'll get printed that you'll leave. And it'll be more complete, but this is a sample of it. This is a 10-6 arm, which is where that 5 3/4 came in. So somebody puts 20% down, they have really good credit, they would get that rate. And these are the different rates based on, again, down payment. These are the APRs, sorry. These are the rates up here. It's new actually, the APR. I think I passed that page. Here's the VA rates, 5.5%, 5 year probably more like 5.5, 5.625. Most veterans aren't putting 20% down to get that rate. So this gives you the matrix of what that new buyer would get when they came in and made an offer on the property. So the buyer said, I want to use it in my FHA loan, I want to put 3.5% down. I have a 720 credit score, they'll get a rate of 5.625. It's already locked in. It was locked in at the time your seller agreed to use this program. So the buyer just has to qualify for that loan. Now, if that buyer came with a different realtor, which is most common, in order for them to take advantage of the seller concession and our 1 point that we're using to buy down the rate, they must use CMG as their lender to get this program. So they have to switch. And people switch all the time because they shop rates, and this is more of, you may have found your source, but if you want this, you're unfortunately gonna have to switch.
And you're gonna be so much happier.
And they're gonna be so much happier when you work with us. Exactly. So then this will populate a picture that you choose we want to put in there. So that's one thing. Let's go back to on the seller side. Let's go back to this. So one thing you need to know that there's a cost of, I could just say it's $1,000, $9.99, that the seller pays on the day they want to lock in the rate and use this program. They must put it on a credit card. You as their realtor can pay for it, or the seller can pay for it. It can't be split, it's gotta be all or nothing. It is refundable as long as that loan closes with us. And it closes within those 60 days, because this is a 60-day lock that the seller is buying. If your seller said, I don't want to pay 3%, I'd like to pay 2%, then you would just go back in there and change the concession. Then we would change it to 2. It'll then affect the rate, so the rate will be a little bit higher because you're buying it down with less money. And then that'll show that the same information, just at a little bit higher rate. And I'll show one more thing, and then that's it. So now we're at 5.875 instead of 5.65, like the other one was. So now if the seller said that concessions drop down to 11,000. Now if the seller says, I want to go for this makes sense, so what do I do next? They would click on there, you gotta fill in all this information, their name, your guys' names as their agent, proper address, listing status, so if it's listed, we would go grab the MLS, it'll pull that data in with photos, all that stuff to start creating all the background marketing material. And then it takes them to, and while we continue, so I'm not filling it all in, it'll take them to a 2-page PDF agreement, because it's a very legal transaction to let them know what they're getting involved with, what everybody's commitments are, and that they must meet the criteria of a new buyer coming in, closing within 60 days of the day of the lock. If the first buyer enters into a contract and 2 weeks later decides not to buy the house, that lock is still available to the next buyer at the same rates and everything. They just qualify where they qualify based on that matrix of where the buyer would fit into for qualifying for a certain loan type. So just because it falls out of contract doesn't mean the lock goes away.
But you still have the same 60-day deadline.
No, right, you still have to close it out within 45 days, to have example. And if the interest rates drop during that 60-day period, the new buyer gets to take advantage of the lower rates. It's called a float down option, which we give on all of our loans, and this is one of our regular loans. We're just tying it into this program, so they would take advantage of a lower rate at no cost to anybody. So it's a really unique, great tool to share, in my opinion, in this marketplace where you currently don't have several offers on a home that just hasn't sold. So I look at using this 3 ways. One, to try and get a listing and separate yourself from any other realtor that's presenting to want to get a listing on the property. Say, hey, if your home doesn't sell the first couple of weeks, I've got this tool that we can use. I've got another tool about this buy down program we should consider using and paying concessions. If you do have a listing already and it hasn't sold, then you can bring this up and say, here's another option to help us sell your home without dropping your price. Yes, the amount of money you're going to make is the same by a reduction of the cost. But at least you're opening up the door to a whole lot more potential buyers. And you might even drive buyers into an open house if you have one that wouldn't have come if they didn't see a rate of 5 3/4 or 5.65 or whatever the rate is at that time. So it helps you fill your pipeline of potential more buyers. Or you can do this right out the gate when you have a new listing and they go, yep, I want to list with you. I want to get this house sold as fast as possible. Let's utilize that list on program now instead of waiting. So you can use it anytime you want to. There's no limitation about it. So with those couple of tools and the information about the market, I think that's great information that we show all your clients, whether they're buyers and sellers. It's just how you present it, where you're comfortable with. And I'm always here to help you with navigating through that information, or do a 3-way call or a Zoom call. So, any questions on any of that? Sure.
We can do it offline. I'm on the website, but I don't know how to get to all that. You just
Okay, I'll show you really quick. Yeah.
because it sent me a link, but it just keeps sending me to the same thing.
Okay, I'll show you. Okay, yeah, where to go. If you want to go list them up, you hit the purchase drop down and then hit list them up
Okay, got it.
and see where that should take you there. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the video, and then on the lower left side is where it says get started. you want to actually start. So any other questions on that information? I know it's not all, it wasn't, it's very, well, it's basic information, but it's very complex and detailed. But that's what's gonna make you be different than someone else who's sticking to the basics. You now have some tools to help you change the conversation with buyers and sellers, and that was the goal of getting together today. I hope that was helpful, and if you need anything from me, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Really appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mitch.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. Have a good day today. Yeah, good. Any in-person questions?
You help me with that.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a great, like, our site is actually pretty
Yeah,
user friendly and user, like, it's not just a one thing, there's so many different things you can play with. Buying versus renting is another great calculator in there that really helps a buyer look at, well, if I continue to rent for this long, and if I buy, where's my break even period, with the best time, as far as should I buy or not, and keep paying rent.